What up, everyone? I'm Vijesh Rajan, your friendly neighborhood motion designer and VFX supervisor working at Plexus Motion. And welcome to another episode of Decoding Title Sequences. Over the past couple of weeks, we have been covering title sequences from a bunch of really cool shows and series. But this time, I wanted to cover a title sequence from a feature film, and I wanted to start it with this absolute banger. So, we're decoding the title sequence from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Co-written, directed and produced by one of my absolute favorite directors, Edgar Wright, the film is an adaptation of the graphic novel Scott Pilgrim by Brian Lee O'Malley. The film released in 2010 featuring a stellar cast including Michael Cera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Aubrey Plaza, Kieran Culkin, Brie Larson, Chris Evans, Anna Kendrick, the list really goes on. The story centers around Scott Pilgrim, a bass player in his indie garage band called Sex Bomb, who meets the mysterious Ramona and instantly falls in love with her. But soon, he realizes that if he has to date her, then he has to defeat all 7 of her exes first. Isn't that an amazing premise for a film? What follows is high-octane rock music and fantastical fight sequences that give you the recipe for a cult classic. So, what are we waiting for? Let's dive right in.
Okay, let's start with Launchpad McQuack.
That's not the actual title of the song.
Sex Bomb! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Lemonade the stasis. Mama serpentine. I got a breathalyzer and my body's clean.
You guys are so amazing.
Whoa! If there's one word that could describe that title sequence, it would be Sex Bomb. What a trippy sequence, man. I still remember watching this film in the cinemas when it came out. I had no idea what was coming up. And in that dark room, along with so many other fans, this title sequence felt like an explosion of color and energy, and man, it completely hyped me up for what the film had in store. The track, the cold opening, the setup, they all built such high expectations. And guess what? The film totally delivered. No letdowns whatsoever. So now let's talk a little bit about the treatment of this title sequence. What really gets me excited about this sequence is how it uses film negative as a cornerstone for art and animation. These days, it's really easy to get film scratch templates online, but back in the day, I've really had a blast playing around with film scratches and burns in some of my own projects, like the opening for Gangs of Wasseypur and these other experimental shorts. The way it all comes together, this sort of raw, organic, unpredictable vibe, it's really mesmerizing. It's also kind of a mess, but it really sets the scene for a crazy ride, especially if the movie is about to be like that. But while watching this sequence in normal speed is great, The real beauty comes when you watch it in 1/4 its actual speed. That's when you start seeing the different shapes and symbols and all the animation that it uses as it rolls out the red carpet for the film's cast and crew. You can see there are like secret keys to the characters of each of the actors, like this Chris Evans slate which has skateboards because, well, you guessed it, in the film you see the character and all his body doubles holding skateboards. Brie Larson plays Scott Pilgrim's ex-girlfriend, and so her slate has broken heart. Alison Pill is Scott Pilgrim's drummer, and she's the one who usually does the countdown, which is why you can see that on her slate. Brandon Routh has a bass battle with Scott Pilgrim, which is why you see the guitars. But he also has cool vegan powers, which you can see represented with these circles. Jason Schwartzman has a really awesome sword fight with Scott, which is why you see these swishes and cuts. Mark Webber is Scott's bandmate, and so you see guitars and these sound waves. Mae Whitman uses these whips made of blades, which is why you see these blades in her part of the sequence. Ellen Wong plays Knives Chow, so knives. And all of these are her other exes, so exes. This is followed by colorful explosions, this star with a smiley, these cute hearts, this maple leaf because the film is set in the mysterious lands of Toronto, Canada. These lovely streaks, some close-ups of bass guitar strings, more colorful lines, and then we transition back to the absolutely flabbergasted Knives Chow. Now let's talk a little bit about the makers of the title sequence. Director Edgar Wright is a master. He's teamed up with a lot of different people to make interesting sequences, and this time he teamed up with a UK-based team called Shinola. So who or what is Shinola?
Check this out. We're in the creative home of the guys from Shinola.
I'm Jason, I'm in Shinola.
My name's Gideon, I'm from Shinola. Hi, I'm Chris, same.
Hello.
Nice mug.
Cheers, it's Kiss. I don't work here.
Richard from Shinola and Edgar had met at a party and had immediately become friends and admirers of each other's work. Ever since, they've attempted to collaborate on several projects, but things never panned out. Finally, Scott Pilgrim happened, and Edgar knew that Shinola's highly detailed animation would be a perfect match for what he wanted for the title sequence. So, how did they end up achieving this look for the title sequence? Let's talk a little bit about their process. Director Edgar Wright teamed up with his brother Oscar and sketched out detailed storyboards for several of the film sequences. Using their illustrations, they nailed the opening scene with the band jamming at the house. Initially, this was just meant to be a main title and not have all the other credits, but then Quentin Tarantino, a big shot director and a good buddy of Edgar Wright's, got an early glimpse of the film and felt that the film could really do with a killer title sequence to reel in the audience. And Edgar took that advice very seriously. And just like that, movie magic was made. Edgar gave Shinola a neat challenge. Mix the cosmic vibe of 2001: A Space Odyssey with the colorful spirit of Sesame Street.
Sunscreen on our head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
Hey, don't look at me, that was the brief. And Shinola totally nailed the brief. They took a page out of the old school playbook, drawing inspiration from pioneers like Len Lai, Oscar Fischinger, Stan Brakhage, and Norman McLaren. Now, these filmmakers operated somewhere in the 1940s to the 1970s, and they did a lot of work which didn't even use the camera. They directly drew onto film negatives and achieved this really organic look that you really can't find these days. When you dive into the films that inspired Shinola, it's clear as day how much these experimental filmmakers have shaped the world of motion design for years. So now let's talk a little bit about the technique that they used. How did they pull this off? Did they really go fully old school drawing straight on film? Kinda, sorta, not exactly. While working directly with film is really cool and it'll give you that organic vibe, it has its own issues, it has its own limitations. And especially when you're working against the clock and if you're on a deadline, you'll need some creative solutions. So the first stage of what they did was they put together a slick animatic to get a clear picture of what they were aiming for, making sure that it grooved right with the music. Then they got crafty, and instead of using film stock, they used acetate sheets, which is kind of like film's close cousin. And what they did is on each of these sheets, they drew several stages of these objects forming and deforming, entering or exiting, and they made sure that each of these sheets had just enough for about a second's worth of animation. Then they went all in to get the organic details and textures. Those acetate sheets, they toss them around to pick up real world dirt, scratches, and the occasional stray hair. When they scanned them in high definition, you could see all that detail come to life. And for the titles, they decided to keep it clean and simple, standing out against a vibrant backdrop. The best thing to go is to go absolutely simple. Then they pieced everything together on Avid, which is an editing software. Can you believe it, guys? There's no magic tricks or digital presets in this entire title sequence. It's all just pure frame by frame hard work. So what about the logo animation? How did they go about that? So if you think back to that part of the sequence, the band room, which is like really small, starts stretching out just like it's going on forever, and the camera is pulling back until we're right behind the two characters watching the band, and then out of nowhere, wham! The logo comes at you, all zapped out with crazy colors and twists. Now if you notice the logo here, it's a totally different vibe from the Scott Pilgrim manga comics. If you look at the close-ups of some of the band members playing their instruments, can you see these cool energy waves shooting out from under the instruments? In an interview, the creators mentioned that they got some inspiration for the electric shape of the sound waves in this old school RKO Radio Pictures logo animation. But knowing Scott Pilgrim's universe, they had to jazz it up with the look of anime energy effects animation. And if you're really paying attention to this scene, it's pretty clear those sound waves belting out from the instruments and the lead singer's vocals, they all merge together to form the high energy logo animation. What a simple thought, but what a gorgeous execution. Now let's talk about the heart and soul of this title sequence, the music. The song playing in this sequence is composed by an American musician known as Beck, who shot to fame in the 90s with his experimental lo-fi compositions. Weber, Pill and Simmons, as the band members of the Sex Bob-omb, all had to learn to play their respective instruments and spend time rehearsing as a band with Michael Cera, who already played bass. Beck took a very different approach to recording these songs. He made sure that the songs were written, composed and recorded within 2 days. And that's because he wanted them to sound edgy and almost amateur. And this is what gave the music the raw, unpracticed high school band vibe. All in all these elements came together and made one of the most memorable title sequences that I've ever seen. And you can see how much the sequences really influenced the motion design industry and several title sequences after that. So that's it from me today, guys. I hope you really liked this video and enjoyed decoding this title sequence with me. If you want me to make more of these, then you know what to do. Like this video, subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon. If you have any recommendations for what we should decode next, leave them in the comments below. Check us out on Instagram, we're at plexus.motion. If you want to see my goofy face, then I'm at vijesh.plexus. That's it from me, guys. Take care. See you soon. Shabba khair.